Good morning, all of you. Welcome back to the channel. So, in today's analysis video, we'll be analyzing the important topics from 23rd of May's newspaper. So, let's start with the Hindu newspaper first. So, here we see that fresh violence puts Manipur on the edge. We've been seeing that situation in Manipur, it remains volatile, and we are seeing again the incidences of violence erupting in Manipur. So abandoned houses torched in the second incidence of violence in 12 hours, and ex-MLA behind the conspiracy has been arrested, as per the Chief Minister of Manipur. So here, like for us, what is important is that the ethnic composition, what is the reason behind, and like obviously there is one sudden reason which led to the violence initially, and what were the long pending reasons. So we have discussed all of that. So that is important for us to know. Then regarding rupees 2000 notes, so do not rush to swap the 2000 rupee notes. This is coming from RBI. So definitely you can start exchanging the notes from today itself. And you have like still a very long window that is being provided by the RBI, seeking to allay the concerns about the legal tender status of rupees 2000 currency notes after September 30 deadline for their exchange or deposit. RBI governor on Monday, he clarified that there was no need to rush to the banks. The announcement of the last date was only meant to nudge the people to return the notes soon. So this is what he's saying, but यहाँ पे भी we are not seeing any clarity कि 30th of September के बाद क्या status रहने वाला है 2000 rupee notes का. So speaking in Delhi, he said a time limit it had been specified along with May 19 decision to withdraw rupees 2000 notes from circulation just to ensure the announcement is taken seriously, adding that there were adequate currency stocks with the banking system to replace these notes. So that's there, and no, like again, as I just said, there's not much clarity about their post 30th of September legal status. So Prime Minister extols value of the Pacific Island nations at the third FIPIC summit. So Pacific Island nations, third of FIPIC summit, it is being held. It's being happening in Papua New Guinea, and small island nations of the Pacific Ocean. They are in fact large ocean states, and they're definitely they have their own respective importance. And FIPIC, it has 14 members. FIPIC stands for Forum for India Pacific Islands Cooperation. And in the opening session of the FIPIC 3 summit, the Prime Minister Modi spoke in favor of free and open Indo-Pacific region and focused on India's commitment to assist developmental goals of member countries. So there are different challenges at the climate front, natural calamities, poverty, famine, they are already existed, but now new challenges are also emerging at the same time regarding the supply chain of food, fuel, fertilizer, pharma. So these are new emerging challenges, and those like we thought they were reliable, we came to know that they were not standing with us. So this is in the terms of the member countries who's supporting and who's not. And the previous two summits, they were held in November 2014 and then August 2015 in Jaipur. So you can find out the location of Port Moresby, which is there in Papua New Guinea. And he visited here after the G7 summit, which was there in Hiroshima, Japan. So basically, obviously, we are not a member of G7, but we were invited as a guest country in G7 summit. So the FIPIC countries, they have suffered because of high tariff on energy and food. So these are small island countries, not that rich. So this is one of the challenge. And they have like given a plea to India, which says, we are the victims of the global power play and we want you to be an advocate for us and sit in those meetings. So he said, urging India to serve as the voice of the global South in the G7 and the G20 as well. So even Global South Summit that was hosted by India. So all of that becomes important. You need to have clarity about which all countries they are the member of Global South, and like is there any overlapping between the like FIPIC, then Global South we talk about. So you can just find out about that. And what is the main aim of these different bodies on which like they are focusing? So that can be also asked. So wrestlers, they accept the WFI chief's demand for the narco test under SC supervision. So grapplers protesting against the Wrestling Federation of India's chief Brijbhushan Sharan Singh said that they were ready to undergo a narco test under the supervision of the Supreme Court. So you need to find out about how narco test that is conducted. And telecast test, what is that? So wrestlers said that we are agree to go for the narco test, but they said that it should be conducted under Supreme Court's supervision, and it should be telecast so that everybody gets to see the questions put to the WFI president and the wrestlers who have registered the complaints. So दोनों parties का नार्को टेस्ट होगा एंड रेसलर्स ने बोला है कि इसको ऑनलाइन टेलीकास्ट किया जाना चाहिए सो दैट एवरीबडी गेट्स टू नो कि क्या क्वेश्चंस उनसे पूछे गए. Coming to the editorial page, here it is again talking about Karnataka's new yet daunting journey to development. So it is state specific. Here it is talking about the G7. It must build a global consensus on the world's challenges. So, what are the global challenges? We need to know about them. So, by holding the meeting of G7 or the so called group of the world's most industrialized nations. So, G7 comprises the world's most industrialized nations. It was held in Hiroshima, Japan. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who belongs to the city, wanted to send out a message of global solidarity for peace. So, in addition to the symbolism of bringing the leaders of all the G7 members with the EU leadership to the Peace Memorial for the victims of 1945 atomic bombing, the grouping it issued a special Hiroshima vision statement on nuclear disarmament. So you can just have a look at it. Then summit's importance, it was underlined by the fact that US president, he was only the second sitting American president to visit the Hiroshima city. He made a particular point of attending the summit. And then even Ukrainian's president, he made a surprise arrival, also enhanced the message by turning the spotlight on the horrors of Russia's invasion. Then our prime minister's statement, he said that crisis was one of the humanity. It was significant. And G7 members, they issued a separate statement on Ukraine, hitting Russia with more sanctions, but failed to highlight a path towards dialogue and ending this war. So we are not having much more clarity when we talk about ki kaise ye war, how it is going to come to an end. So there is no clarity about that, but kuch member countries ne bola ki aur sanctions impose kiye jane chahiye on Russia. And despite the invitation of the countries such as India, Brazil, Indonesia, and Vietnam, with a less black and white view of the world, and Mr. Kishida making pertinent references to views of the global South, the summit statement reflected a much more polarized view of the world that G7 members alone. So this was one of the outcomes, and if the G7 grouping, it wishes to broaden its prism, it must recognize it is grossly unrepresentative of the world today. Definitely, आप ये नहीं बोल सकते हो 7 countries which are most industrialized, they would be representing the entire globe. So while the members together, they represent more than half of the world's net wealth. G7, it accounts for less than a third of the global GDP. So now you can have an idea that these are, despite being the most industrialized nations in the world, they account for only like less than 1/3 of the global GDP. So just over a tenth of the world's population is that what they account for. And apart from Japan, the G7 membership it comprises of an essentially Euro-American worldview. So we can say it's narrow in nature and it is not discussing the expanding that view soon. So it has actually contracted after it expelled Russia over its annexation of areas of Georgia in 2008 and then Crimea in 2014. So Russia was also a member, but then it was expelled because of its past actions. And it is also hard to justify an economic grouping that does not include some of the world's largest economies like China and India, the fastest growing GDPs and the biggest global energy providers. So we can say that it is just restricted to Euro-American world and ऐसा कोई प्लान नहीं है कि आने वाले टाइम में इट वुड बी एक्सपैंडिंग द मेंबरशिप एंड इंक्लूडिंग कंट्रीज जो वन ऑफ द फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग इमर्जिंग मार्केट्स हैं एंड दैट्स द थिंग कि ऐसा कुछ प्लान नहीं है तो इवन दैट मेक्स इट नैरो एंड उसके बाद इट इज लाइक इंस्टेड ऑफ गोइंग अहेड एंड थिंकिंग अबाउट एक्सपैंडिंग इटसेल्फ इन द पास्ट यहाँ पे एक दे रखा है कि रशिया को तो एक्सपेल कर दिया गया था तो इट इज बिकमिंग मच मोर नैरो. So while some efforts they were made in Hiroshima to recognize the G7's role, like in promoting transparent financing and debt sustainability for the developing world or in compensation for the developed world's contribution to global warming and greenhouse gas emissions, the summit it failed to propose concrete measures to help defray these responsibilities. So there's spotlight on G20 summit as well, which will be happening later this year in Delhi. So it is hoped that grouping will work towards a more inclusive outlook and help in building more comprehensive global consensus on some of the bigger challenges that the world faces today. So these are some of the drawbacks of the G7 grouping. So here it is talking about the withdrawal of rupees 2,000 notes. So slow withdrawal without setting a deadline. RBI could have withdrawn the notes gradually. Also, that could have been one of the possibilities. But here, deadline it has been fixed, and all the other important details that we have discussed so far. So here we see central bank, it is also contended that the notes sought to be withdrawn were at the end of their estimated lifespan of 4 to 5 years. Well, this was already planned, ki rupees 2,000 notes would be there for 4 to 5 years only, and that the value of these bills in circulation had declined to rupees 3.62 lakh crores rupees, or we can say 10.8% of the total notes in circulation. So RBI retains the right to issue or withdraw the currency bills as it deems fit for the conduct of its policy mandate, but the lack of transparency now and the administrative flip-flops do little to enhance the trust in its promise to pay the bearer the notes face value. So RBI के पास ये right है कि वो issue भी कर सकता है और withdraw भी कर सकता है different currency notes. बट अभी की जो स्टेप लिया गया है उसमें बोला जा रहा है कि लैक्स ऑन ट्रांसपेरेंसी एंड जैसे हर नोट हर करेंसी नोट पे लिखा होता है इट promises to pay the bearer the notes face value तो उस पे भी बेसिकली ट्रस्ट इश्यूज हो सकते हैं बट इतना कोई मेजर प्रॉब्लम या मेजर इशू नहीं है. So Antarctic sea ice cover hits many record lows. So barring March and April, on all the other days of 2023, the sea ice extent has remained the lowest ever recorded. So ये हमने पहले भी देखा था कि जिस रेट पे the glaciers, they are melting, that is unprecedented, and जो forecasted levels थे उसको भी तोड़ दिया है. तो that is obviously ऐसे rate पे like things obviously we can't reverse them back. And यहाँ पे even data is also given. So if we go by map number 2, it shows the Antarctic sea ice extent as of 21st May 2023 कितना है. So this is Eastern Antarctica, this is West Antarctica, and जो ये white आप color में देख रहे हो, this is the current sea ice extent. And ये जो येलो बाउंड्री बना रखी है, दिस इज द मीडियन सी आइस एक्सटेंड बिटवीन 1981 एंड 2010. सो यू कैन सी कि कितना श्रिंक हो चुका है. ये वाला एरिया पूरा इट हैज मेल्टेड एंड देयर इज नो मोर आइस हेयर और ग्लेशियर. अगेन यहाँ पे भी, एंड ये हेयर यू कैन सी. सो इट इज बेसिकली कॉन्ट्रैक्टिंग इन अ वे बिकॉज इट इज मेल्टिंग. Then again, this issue, we've discussed it a lot of number of times regarding the tussle over services bureaucracy in Delhi. So LG versus the Delhi government. What is the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Amendment Ordinance 2023? So अभी सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जो जजमेंट आई थी उसके बाद एक ऑर्डिनेंस इशू किया गया है बाय द प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया. दैट वुड बी इन अ वे it would be turning over जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने अपनी जजमेंट में बोला. So how is it going to affect the powers of the elected state government of Delhi? Because जो भी judgment थी that was in favor of the government of Delhi. So that is why कुछ हो सकता है, obviously political reasons भी हो सकते हैं, but we'll not go into that. So does it restore the powers of the LG or not? So here it is talking the context of this ordinance. And what was the May 11 judgment by the Supreme Court? So pura issue and कैसे things they took a turn all have been mentioned here. So here we see कि judgment intended to strike a balance between the national interest of the center in the capital and the authority of an elected Delhi government to legislate and administer meaningfully through the professional civil services officers deputed to its departments. So Supreme Court की जो judgment थी, it tried to strike a balance between these two. However, on 19th of May, center it turned the tables on the judgment because एक ordinance issue किया गया by the president. So आपको article पता होना चाहिए कि which article talks about the ordinance issuing powers of the president. And this ordinance, it was issued to make a fresh claim of power over the services in the capital. So ordinance का main purpose यही था कि जो LG की powers हैं वो supreme रहे compared to the government of Delhi. So the stated aim of the ordinance, it is to provide for a comprehensive scheme of administration of services, which balances the local and the domestic interest of the people of Delhi with the democratic will of the entire nation, which is reflected through the President of India. So ये ordinance किस बारे में बात कर रहा है, क्या बोल रहा है, क्या ये चाहता है? Let's understand that. So government, it has used the ordinance route to indirectly return to its original position, which it had taken on 21st of May 2015 through a home ministry notification. So notification which formed the bone of contention between the Aam Aadmi Party government and the center for the past 8 years gave the LG the power over the services. So obviously जो यूनियन गवर्नमेंट है वो यही चाहती है कि एलजी की पावर सुप्रीम रहे compared to the chief minister of Delhi. So it required कि LG would be consulting the chief minister only at his discretion. So notification ने बोला it basically excluded entry 41, which is about the services of the state list, from the scope of the powers of the Delhi government. So basically concentration of power in the hands of LG. And तो ये यही बात कर रहे हैं. So Supreme Court had envisaged a neutral civil service carrying out the day-to-day decisions of the Council of Ministers, and NCCA NCCSA, it attempts to bring the civil service officers out of the administrative control of the elected ministers who embody the will of the people and transform them into power of the lobby. So this is what we are seeing from this ordinance ki jo Delhi government obviously that is elected and that is reflecting the will of the people. तो आप उसको प्रेशराइज करके आप मतलब जो भी करके यू आर ट्राइंग टू सबसाइड दैट एंड आप चाहते हो कि जो एक लॉबी है दैट रिमेन्स पावरफुल सो ऑब्वियसली दैट इज इन अ वे हिंटिंग टुवर्ड्स द एलजी की एलजी के पास मेजर पावर्स रहनी चाहिए एलजी की पावर सुप्रीम होनी चाहिए कंपेयर टू द चीफ मिनिस्टर एंड द इलेक्टेड गवर्नमेंट ऑफ दिल्ली सो जो ये ऑर्डिनेंस है it negates the intrinsic link between the government accountability and the principle of collective responsibility highlighted in the judgment. So ordinance by creating the NCCSA's courts, the emphasis which were laid down in the judgment on triple chain of command in the governance of Delhi. So this was said in the Supreme Court judgment. जब हम triple chain of command की बात करते हैं So court it had held कि civil services they were accountable to the ministers of the elected government under whom they function. So जो civil servants है which are functioning तो obviously they are functioning under the elected government या जो ministers हैं of the Delhi government and they are accountable to them. So ministers were in turn accountable to the legislature. Then obviously we talk about collective responsibility and the legislature it is ultimately accountable to the people of Delhi. So this is the triple chain of command. Ki civil servants, yeah, bureaucracy, it is accountable to the ministers, the elected ministers of Delhi. Ministers, they are accountable to the legislature and legislature is ultimately accountable to the people of Delhi. So ये जो chain of command है, it was forged by the Supreme Court to ensure कि we are not violating the principles of democratic accountability. But through this ordinance, we are seeing कि ये जो chain है ये पूरी disturb हो रही है. So क्या ये ordinance is it against जो भी recent Supreme Court judgment आई थी? So ordinance it is based on the argument कि Supreme Court has itself acknowledged the superior authority of Parliament to make the laws for the national capital. So ordinance यही बोल रहा है या प्रेसिडेंट ने ऑर्डिनेंस इशू किया है तो जो यूनियन गवर्नमेंट ऑफ दिल्ली है उनकी आर्ग्यूमेंट ये है कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने पहले ही अपनी एक जजमेंट में ये बोला था कि जो सुपीरियर अथॉरिटी रहेगी वो पार्लियामेंट की रहेगी रिगार्डिंग द पावर टू मेक लॉज फॉर द नेशनल कैपिटल So they are saying कि it is not violating जो भी recent Supreme Court judgment आई थी. So review petition file की गई by center in the Supreme Court जिसका जिन्होंने basically the center it was claiming कि Delhi it is not a full-fledged state but only a union territory with which is an extension of the union. So we know कि Delhi it is not a state. So इसलिए यहाँ पे हमें इतना ज़्यादा disturbance भी देखने को मिल रहा है. कि यूनियन बेसिकली गिव अप नहीं करना चाहती है सो यूनियन इज सेइंग कि जो पार्लियामेंट है दैट इज दिल्लीज ट्रू लेजिस्लेचर एंड सेंटर हैज आर्ग्यूड दिस थिंग एज वेल सो जो 11th मई को भी जजमेंट आई थी it addresses this contention by acknowledging कि दो दिल्ली एक full fledged state नहीं है but उसकी जो legislative assembly है that is constitutionally entrusted with the power to legislate upon the subjects in the state list and the concurrent list. So जो state के पास power है same powers union territory of Delhi के पास भी है and this was said by the Supreme Court also. And unanimous judgment जो आई it held that though Delhi it is not a state under the first schedule to the constitution it is conferred with the power to legislate upon the subjects to give effect to the aspirations of the people of NCTD that is the National Capital Territory of Delhi. So जो legislature है the state assembly है दिल्ली का उसके पास definitely powers हैं to legislate upon the subjects जो स्टेट लिस्ट पे है एंड कॉर्पोरेट लिस्ट में है एंड डेफिनेटली इट इज अ डेमोक्रेटिकली इलेक्टेड गवर्नमेंट आल्सो जो accountable head to the people of NCTD. So constitutional scheme which was envisaged in Article 239 AA, which is related to the Union Territory of Delhi. So Delhi, it was given the legislative power, which it was, although it was limited, but it was given that power. In many aspects, it is similar to the states. So basically, with the addition of Article 239 AA Constitution, it created an asymmetric federal model with the Union of India at the center and NCTD at the regional level. So this was in a way asymmetric federal model. So here we can't violate this federal feature. And what lies ahead? So an ordinance, it is not beyond the judicial review of the apex court. So Supreme Court still have the power to, review the ordinance, and if 2023 ordinance that is challenged separately, अगर इस ordinance को separately challenge किया जाता है, तो union would have to prove कि क्या एक्स्ट्रा ऑर्डिनरी या इमरजेंट सिचुएशन हुई जिसकी वजह से आपको एक ऑर्डिनेंस प्रोमलगेट करना पड़ा डेज आफ्टर द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बेंच, जिन्होंने ये पूरा इशू सेटल कर दिया गया था. तो अगर कोई इस ऑर्डिनेंस को चैलेंज करता है इन द सुप्रीम कोर्ट, देन गवर्नमेंट, यूनियन गवर्नमेंट को प्रूव करना पड़ेगा कि क्या एक्स्ट्रा ऑर्डिनरी या इमरजेंट सिचुएशन रही जिसकी वजह से उनको एक ऑर्डिनेंस इशू करना पड़ा. And Constitution Bench in DC Wadhwa versus State of BR had held the power of executive to promulgate an ordinance should not be perverted to serve the political ends. To serve the political ends, आप उस बेसिस के लिए या उस चीज के लिए, उस रीजन के लिए ऑर्डिनेंस को इशू नहीं कर सकते हो. तो एग्जीक्यूटिव इस पर्पस को फुलफिल करने के लिए ऑर्डिनेंस इशू नहीं कर सकता है. दिस वाज आल्सो upheld in one of the Supreme Court judgment, which is the DC Wadhwa judgment. So territorial army, it steps in Manipur, takes control of fuel and LPG supplies. So territorial army stepped in and they took the control. They augmented the manpower where there is shortage to ensure supplies of essential petroleum and oil products and refueling of the aircrafts. So we are seeing the crisis situation still continues in the state. So Vice President calls for reflection on disruptions in the parliament. So he called for serious reflection on what he termed a tendency to weaponize the disruption and disturbance as a political strategy in the parliament and even in the state legislatures. So he's talking in the context of functioning of the parliament and even the state legislatures. So says the nation, it expects the parliament and legislatures to establish the traditions of parliamentary democracy that exemplify the highest standards. So you need to know, you need to have clear interpretation when we talk about what is parliamentary democracy, what are its unique features that defines it. So that is important. So purchase of fuel using rupees 2000 notes, it spikes to 90% because they are accepting rupees 2000 notes because of certain incentives which are being provided to the petrol pumps. So cash purchase of fuel at petrol pumps using rupees 2000 notes has spiked to almost 90% of the daily sales as buyers, they rushed to tender the withdrawn currency notes. And इस decision से पहले it was like only 10% जो customers they were using 2000 notes, but now it is spiked to 90%. So Parak से regarding पता होना चाहिए that it is related to what? So Education Ministry it holds meet on Parak, which is aimed at unifying 60 school boards. So it is related to like education, so that's clear. So the mandate of Parak is to work on bringing the school boards across states and union territories on a common platform. So it's kind of an online platform which is named Parak. So USA has signed a security pact with Papua New Guinea amid competition with China. So even USA की presence, it is increasing in the Indo-Pacific, and definitely China, though it is asserting itself there, which is creating more tension in this region. So European Union, it imposed $1.3 billion of fine on Meta, and it has ordered to stop sending the data to USA. So it is the biggest penalty since EU's strict data privacy regime. It took effect 5 years ago. So demand, it will pick up and spur the capital expenditure as inflation recedes. So abhi ke liye to we are seeing relief. We are having this relief at the inflation front, but aane wale time mein concerns are there. So we can't, just relax ki yes, inflation is receding, and in the future also it would be in the comfortable territory. But finance ministry, it has also flagged the downside risk to growth also and upside risk to inflation. So that's what I was saying. Ki there still remains the risk कि आने वाले time में inflation might increase and जो growth है, it might fall. So that is because of uncertainties from external sector and because of weather reasons. El Nino, these are the concerns for future. So crops, they are unlikely to suffer despite uncertainty around the monsoon as reservoir levels, they are healthy and too early to forecast full year outcomes, but a good beginning is harbinger of positive outcomes. So that is the situation so far. Private consumption and your rural demand, that is to drive Q1 growth. So growth, it is expected to be driven the first quarter of this financial by private consumption, supported by reviving rural demand and renewed buoyancy in manufacturing on easing of the input cost pressures. So even in manufacturing sector, the activity is reviving because your input cost that is cooling down. So headline inflation that is also eased below 5% in April for the first time since November 2021. So sustained buoyancy in services, especially the contact intensive sectors and moderating inflationary pressures will aid growth momentum. And Adani Group stocks rally up to 19%. So I guess this is the best performance after the जो भी issue start हुआ by the Hindenburg report. So RBI's governor, he talks governance and ethics with the public sector banks director. So ethics and governance in banking and even in economics. So that's an important element. So he met with the board of directors of all the PSBs to discuss the issues related to governance and ethics. So RBI governor, he rules out rupees 1000 notes. So ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. That's what he clearly said कि आने वाले टाइम में क्या 1000 rupee notes को फिर से reintroduce किया जाएगा या नहीं. So for the time being, he has denied it, and he says कि there is enough printed stock in the system, and most 2000 notes, they are to be returned by September end. So impact of withdrawal on the economy will be very, very marginal, because it is only 10.8% of the currency in circulation right now. So rupees 2000 notes comprises of just 10.8% of the currency in circulation, and at the same time liquidity conditions, they are also good. So ऐसा कोई major impact नहीं होगा because of this decision. And finance secretary says कि जो high value notes and they are more prone to be misused. So when he was asked कि rupees 2000 notes को क्यों withdraw किया जा रहा है, so this is not something new या unusual नहीं, obviously ये पहले भी किया गया है. So this has happened in the past also, and this is a gradual replacement in line with the clean note policy. But 2000 notes, they continue as a legal tender. It can continue to be used in any quantity or tendered at the bank or exchanged for other denomination notes. So best day for Adani since the Hindenburg. So as just we saw, their stocks have increased by 19%. So you can see sharp increase in different stocks of Adani group of companies. So curbing the foreign remittances. So forex payments above a threshold made through the international credit cards by individuals, they are now under this liberalized remittance scheme, and it would be attracting a tax collected at source, that is TCS of 20% from 1st July. So we see what are the reasons for this decision and lingering concerns among the taxpayers because of this decision. So क्या changes proposed किए गए हैं? So finance ministry has amended the foreign exchange management current account transaction rules, and they have omitted rule number 7 effective May 16, bringing payments under ICCs by individuals under this LRS and subject to an annual cap of $250,000. So this is the annual cap that one individual can spend. So changes तो हमें पता है, हम देख चुके हैं. What is the reason or rationale behind this decision? So finance minister has said कि credit cards, they would be included in LRS to ensure कि such expenses, they do not escape TCS, and it is a set of detailed like FAQs भी issue किए गए, जिसमें finance ministry ने clarify किया कि changes would bring parity in the tax treatment of remittances using debit and credit cards. Further, it would help track जो high value transactions किए जाते हैं in abroad, so you can track and ensure कि जो ये limit है of annual limit, ये cross ना की जाए. And there have been concerns about the jump in the outward remittances that could eventually impact the economic stability. So foreign remittances, बाहर जो इंडिया रेमिटेंसेस सेंड करता है उसको कर्व करने की कोशिश की जा रही है, क्योंकि अगर इसका रेट या अमाउंट बहुत ज्यादा इंक्रीज हो जाता है तो डेफिनेटली दिस वुड बी इम्पैक्टिंग द इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी ऑल्सो. सो रिलैक्सेशन दी गई है कि इफ यू आर स्पेंडिंग रुपीज 7 लाख, तो उस पे बेसिकली विल नॉट बी टैक्स्ड, एंड जो frequent flyers है, this limit may not be sufficient for them, obviously. And in case of business travelers, question also arises कि कैसे personal and official spends on a corporate credit card, आप उनको कैसे differentiate करोगे? So कुछ concerns भी है जिनको address करना फिर important हो जाता है. So finance ministry flags the risk to inflation and growth. ये हमने देख लिया है. Domestic demand, it is strong and there is concern over oil supply and geopolitics, just the foreign reasons. This is also we have seen कि RBI report का कहना ये है कि private consumption and rural demand जो revive हो रही है, that is going to drive the economic growth. So legal tender status for rupees 2000 notes likely till 95% of the notes they are withdrawn. So this is in a way hinting towards कि after 30th of September, they would not be legal tender. And ATMs, they have also stopped dispensing rupees 2000 notes. And जो cash recycling machines है, they would continue to accept the deposit of these currency notes. तो आपको पता होना चाहिए कि इथेनॉल प्रोडक्शन में क्या क्या रॉ मटेरियल्स पॉसिबली यूज किए जा सकते हैं, बिकॉज इथेनॉल या बायोफ्यूल से रिलेटेड बहुत बार क्वेश्चंस आते हैं. Taking up Indian Express newspaper, so here, like many girls, I had to suffer silently all these years because of this man, which is who was the president of WFI. So as the wrestlers protest, it enters its second month, its face and voice, Vinesh Fogart breaks her silence. So Asian Games is around the corner, though we have to represent India and win medals. This is a bigger battle. What's the point of the medals around your neck if you can't fight for justice? एंड दैट्स ट्रू एज वेल. क्या फायदा मेडल्स का जब आपको अपने कंट्री में जस्टिस नहीं मिल रही है. सो ऑपोजिशन का कहना यह है कि प्रेसिडेंट एंड नॉट प्राइम मिनिस्टर शुड ओपन द न्यू पार्लियामेंट, एंड बीजेपी कॉल्स इट चीप पॉलिटिक्स. सो ऑपोजिशन का कहना यह है कि प्रेसिडेंट को इनॉग्रेट करना चाहिए, नॉट प्राइम मिनिस्टर. So at a Harappan site, a mystery buried in time, whose graves are these? So this is basically excavation is going on. So during the excavation of the Juna Khatia site. So Khatia, it is a site located in Gujarat. Here we have Dholavira, here we have the capital of Gujarat. So, sorry, not the capital. Ahmedabad city is located here. So it is more towards, it's closer towards the India-Pakistan border. So the dry, arid soil on a 16-hectare expanse on the outskirts of the Khatia village in Gujarat's Kutch district has thrown up several surprises. So we have discovered a shell bangle, pottery shards, stone blades, and even human skeletal remains. So it is believed to be around 5,000 years old, belong to the pre-urban phase of the Harappan civilization. So they are still looking for clues to see if the burial ground would have served a big human settlement in the vicinity, or if it was a common facility for a cluster of smaller settlements. So Harappan civilization is one of the oldest in the world. It is said to have thrived along the banks of river Indus from around 5000 BC to 1000 BC, while 2500 years long period from 5000 BC to 2600 BC is known as the pre-urban Harappan phase. So there are different Harappan phase, mature Harappan phase, and late Harappan phase, and then pre-urban phase as well. So between 2600 BC to 1900 BC, there was this urban Harappan phase, and from there on, civilization it declines. And 1900 BC से 1000 BC में it is considered the post-urban Harappan phase या late Harappan phase भी हम इसको बोलते हैं. So जो अभी तक हमें findings मिली है through excavations, they are pointing towards कि they date back to pre-urban Harappan status. And Desalpar, Khirsara, Kotda, Badli, and Nadapa, they are the other well-known Harappan sites in the Western Kutch. So this is very, very important for us to remember. Desalpar, Khirsara, Kotda, Badli, and Nadapa. So each of them is a site of urban and post-urban periods of the civilization. And being a pre-urban Harappan cemetery, there is a possibility that either there was a big settlement in Khatia, yeah, it was a group of smaller settlements. And Dholavira ki baat kare, so it is again in Gujarat. You can see location B. So it is also having this UNESCO World Heritage Site status. It is one of the biggest metropolises of the civilization. So economic abuse is a neglected facet in understanding of domestic violence. So economic abuse needs to be understood in the larger social context, which is dictated by a deep-seated patriarchal ideology, changing notions about masculine gender roles alongside the social attitudes with respect to the men's control of the families, financial resources that is critical to bring about the change at a about a larger social level pay. Obviously, we are having a patriarchal society. So even your finances, that is also controlled by the male members of the family. So even that is also in a way part of domestic violence, which can be termed as economic abuse. So along with that, supporting women's economic independence through advocating for their right to work outside the home and make their own financial choices, even that is needed. Can you support the female members in getting financially independent, and you support them when they want to work and they just want to be financially independent. So you need to support their financial choices as well, and if you're not, so even that is a form of domestic violence. So thoda scope ko aur widen karne ki zarurat hai, and this needs to be brought under this law as well, which is Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. And right now it is not covered under this act. Coming to the explained page. So economics of climate change. Here we are having data. So this chart too, in this map, it is talking about risk emanating from climate change across the geographical regions of India. So this red region, it is Thar Desert. Here, the risk of heat waves is very high. In this purple area, which is the northern India and northeastern India, apart from Assam. So here it is the Indo-Gangetic Plains, the river floods, heat waves, and thunderstorms. These are witnessed in high frequencies in this area. Sorry, that's in green color. Talking about green color. In purple, it is Great Himalayan region. Here we are seeing landslides, cloudburst, melting of glaciers. In the yellow region, which is the Deccan part in the central India, so it is heat waves, forest fires, and drought incidences they are faced. And in the coastal regions and Gujarat, we see heavy precipitation, urban floods, cyclones, and landslides. So you can see geographically also how the challenges they are also different as per the geography of a region. So average annual temperature in India between 1901 to 2021. So you can see कि between 1901 till we can say 2018-19 के आसपास तक it was in this range only between 24.5 degrees Celsius to 25.5 degrees Celsius. But इसके बाद so you can see it has taken an upward trend. So it is basically increasing. And जो ये red graph है, this is the annual mean temperature. So जो average है, that is moving upwards. So how vulnerable is India? Global Climate Risk Index 2021. It had ranked India 7th in the list of most affected countries in terms of exposure and vulnerability to climate risk events. So we have been ranked 7th. So another way to examine the vulnerability is to have a look at the structure of India's economy, which has undergone a considerable change since independence. So bulk of जो economic activity है that now happens in the services sector as against agriculture and the allied sectors. So this has implications for carbon emissions also because services they are globally considered to be emission light with relatively lower energy intensity of output. एंड अगर हम सेक्टोरल ब्रेकअप देखें मतलब सेक्टर वाइज कैटेगराइज करें एज पर द हाईएस्ट एमिशन इंटेंसिव सेक्टर्स सो इसमें मेटल इंडस्ट्रीज इलेक्ट्रिसिटी एंड ट्रांसपोर्ट they account for around just 9% of India's total gross value added in 2018-19. In other words, we can say sectoral composition of Indian economy helps reduce its carbon emissions also. So, however, notwithstanding this, your fossil fuels, they have an overwhelmingly large share of 90% in India's primary energy consumption. And this needs to change because again, जो अभी हमारी थर्मल पावर प्लांट्स पे रिलायंस है दैट इज वेरी हाई इसकी वजह से डेफिनेटली जो कार्बन emissions है दैट आल्सो रिमेन्स हाई बिकॉज वी आर डिपेंडेंट majorly upon fossil fuels for electricity generation. So बाकी सारे ये topics economy page के हम already discuss कर चुके हैं. There's all repeated, all have been covered. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us in today's analysis and do hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel.